What is good, horror horde? This is your boy Horror Gamer back with another video for you, and as you can tell by the title of this video, this is another Horror Gamer Reads. And if you're new to Horror Gamer Reads, that's basically what it is. I sit back, I read you a book, we have some nice ominous music in the background, and we just jump into the story. So without further ado, let's just dive into this. We're back into Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Volume 2, Caliban Cove. And the last time we were in this book, there was some fuckery. Man, our heroes are just in it. They're in the thick of it now. And secrets are being unfolded and everything. So, without further ado, let's just dive right into it and see what Chapter 10 holds for our heroes, huh? Alright. Chapter 10. The farther away they got from the front of the concrete block, the less nauseous the air, for which Rebecca was deeply grateful. She'd been seconds away from vomiting herself. The smell was that bad, a greasy, oily stench that seemed almost tangible, an entity in itself. As they moved quietly through the well-lit hall, she found herself thinking again about Nicholas Griffith, about the story of the Marburg victims, and although there was no proof that he was behind the mass slaughter of the Umbrella people, she couldn't shake that feeling that he was responsible. The corridor led them past several open rooms, each as barren and sterile as the building they'd come from. They passed an exit at the far side of the block, and after another turn in the hall, finally came to a door marked again with the letter A, and below it, 1 through 4. There were 3 triangles beneath the numbers, each a different color: red, green, and blue. David opened the door, revealing a much shorter hall, stark fluorescent lights spilling into the stale darkness. There were 2 doors on either side. Steve found the lights and turned them on, and Rebecca saw that there were more of the colored triangles on the door to their right. The other was blank. "I'll take the test," David said. "Steve, you and Rebecca check out the other room. We'll meet back here." Rebecca nodded, and Steve did the same. He looked a little pale, but seemed steady enough, though he dropped his gaze when he noticed her looking. She felt a pang of sympathy for him, realizing that he was probably embarrassed for losing his lunch. They opened the unlabeled door and stepped into yet another windowless room, as stuffy and warm as the rest of the building. Rebecca turned on the lights, and a rather large office lined with bookshelves flickered into view. A steel desk sat in one corner, next to a filing cabinet, the empty drawers standing open. Steve sighed. "Looks like another bust," he said. "You want the desk or the shelves?" Rebecca shrugged. "Shelves, I guess." He grinned almost shyly. "Just as well. Maybe I can find some breath mints or something in one of the drawers." Rebecca smiled, glad he made that joke. "Save me one. I swallowed it down back there, but it was a close call." They locked gazes, still smiling, and Rebecca felt a tiny shiver of excitement run through her as the second stretched, lingering a few beats longer than a more casual exchange. Steve looked away first, but his color had returned, his cheeks slightly pinker than before. He moved to the desk, and Rebecca turned to face a row of books, feeling a little flushed herself. There was a definite attraction here, and it seemed to be mutual. "Hell yeah." "And it's only about the worst time and place to consider it," her mind snapped. "Secure that shit pronto." The books were about what she might expected, considering that they knew about the Trisquas and Umbrella, chemistry, biology, a whole set of leather-bound texts and on behavioral modifications, several medical journals. As Steve rummaged through the desk behind her, she ran her hand along a row, pushing the books towards the back of the shelf. As she glanced over the titles, maybe there was something hidden behind them. Sociology, Pavlov, psych, pathology. She stopped, frowning at a slender black volume tucked between 2 larger books. No title. She pulled it out and felt her heart speed up as she opened the small book. Seeing the spidery handwriting on the lined pages, she flipped to the front, saw Tom Athens written in the neat letters on the inside cover. One of the guys on the list, one of the researchers. "Hey, I found a diary," she said. "It belongs to one of the people from Trent's list, Tom Athens." Steve looked up from the desk, his dark eyes flashing. "No shit. Go to the back. What is the last date?" Rebecca ruffled through the pages to the end, scanning as she went. "Says July 18th, but it doesn't look like he kept it regular. The one before that is July 9th. "Just read the last entry," Steve said. "Maybe it'll tell us what's been going on here." She walked to the desk and leaned against it, clearing her throat. July 18th, Saturday. It's been a long and ridiculous day. The end of a long, ridiculous week. I swear to God, I'm going to beat the crap out of Lewis if he calls one more stupid meeting. Today, it was whether or not we should add a new scenario into the Trish Squad program, as if we need another one. All he really wanted was to get it on paper, and the rest of it was his usual bullshit. The importance of teamwork, the need to share information so we can all stay on the right track. I mean, Jesus. It's like he can't live with the concept that a weekly might go out without his name on it. And he hasn't done dick since the MA7 disaster, except to try and convince everyone that it was Chin's fault. So for not speaking ill of the dead. So much for not speaking ill of the dead, sanctimonious prick. Alan and I talked over the implants yesterday. That's going well. He's going to write up the proposal this week, and we are not going to let Lewis touch it. With any luck, we'll get a green light by the end of the month. Alan figures the white boys are going to want to run this past Birkin, though God only knows why B doesn't give a shit what we're doing out here. He's off being brilliant again. I have to admit, I'm looking forward to his next synthesis. Maybe we can work out some of the bugs in the Trish Squads. There was a minor scare in D on Wednesday in 101. Somebody left the refrigerator open, and Kim swears that there are some chemicals missing. Though I'm starting to think she miscounted again. Hard to believe she's in charge of the infection process. The woman's a ditz, and she's sloppy as hell when it comes to maintaining the equipment. I'm surprised she hasn't managed to infect the entire compound. God knows there's enough in there to do that. I should probably get over to D myself. Make sure everything's ready for tomorrow. Got a new batch shipping in, and Griffith actually asked to watch the process. First time he's come out of the lab in weeks. First time he's ever taken an interest in what the rest of us are doing. I know it's stupid, but I still want him to be impressed, as he's as brilliant as Birkin in his own creepy way. I think he even intimidates Lewis, and Lewis is generally too stupid to scare. More later. Damn. The rest of the pages were blank. Rebecca looked up at Steve, not sure what to say, her mind working to glean the relevant bits of information from the rambling tirade. There was something in there that bothered her, something that she doesn't quite place, or she couldn't quite place. Missing chemicals, infection process, the brilliant, creepy Dr. Griffith. She no longer had any doubt that Griffith had killed the others, but that wasn't what sent her internal alarms jangling. It was Block D, Steve said, a look of anxious fear playing across his face. If we're in A, Karen and John are in D. where there's enough of the T virus to infect the entire compound where the infection process took place. We should tell David, Rebecca said, and Steve nodded, both of them moving quickly from the door, Rebecca hoping desperately that John and Karen wouldn't find room 101, and that if they did, they wouldn't touch anything that could hurt them. Crazy. The test room was big, 3 of the walls lined with open-ended cubicles. Once he turned on the lights, he saw that the tests were clearly numbered and color-coded, the symbols painted on the cement floor in front of each one. All of the red series was on his left, closest to the door. He saw brightly colored blocks and simple shapes on the tables in each cubicle as he walked past, heading for the back of the room. The green series lined the wall opposite, though he ignored it entirely. The back wall was marked with blue triangles. The number 4 test is the far right corner. As he neared the back of the room, he heard a faint hum of power coming from the blue test area. There was a small computer on the table in number 2, a keyboard and headset in 3. As promised, the series was activated, though that they were connected to, he couldn't imagine. Can't imagine and don't care. Once we solve these little puzzles, we'll find whatever's been hidden from us and get out, away from this cemetery. It can't happen soon enough. David had seen all he wanted to see of Caliban Cove. The corpses in the front hall had been bad, but it was the thoughts that they'd inspired that troubled him, made him so suddenly eager to get his team out. The Trisquas were dangerous and deadly. The monster in the cove's waters had been horrible, but somewhere in the facility lurked a monster of a different kind entirely. One that had murdered his own people and then stacked them like kindling in a dark place. That kind of insanity chilled him far worse than the immoral greed of Umbrella, and he was afraid of what such a man might do to the handful of soldiers trying to stop him. We'll find the material, probably notes on Umbrella, perhaps on the virus itself, and then break for the fence, get well away from this madness, let the feds handle the rest. If they're smart, they'll blow up the entire compound and gather the information from the ashes. He stopped in front of the glass cubicle, returning his attention to the task at hand. He wasn't sure what he was expecting to see, but the setup of test number 4 surprised him nonetheless. A table and chair, all-terrain gray metal. On the table was a pad of paper, a pencil, and an inexpensive chess set. All of the pieces in place. As he stepped into the cubicle, he saw that there was a metal plaque set into the surface of the table, a string of numbers etched into the steel. David sat in the chair, peering down at the numbers. 9-22-3, 14-26-9-16-8, 7-19-22, 8-11-12-7. He frowned, looking up at the chess set and then back at the numbers. There was nothing else to look at. That was it. He quickly sorted through the clues of Eamon's message, wondering which was supposed to be the answer. Was it the letters and numbers reverse or don't count? Since there didn't seem to be anything relating to time or a rainbow, it had to be one of the two. If the lines are in the same order as the tests, this is the letter and number reversal. But what letters? There aren't any. David smiled suddenly, shaking his head. The numbers on the plaque didn't go any higher than 26. It was a code, and a fairly simple one. He picked up the pencil and quickly jotted down the numbers on the of the alphabet, then numbered them. Backward, A was 26, B was 25, all the way back to Z1. Glancing back and forth between the plaque and the paper, he wrote down the numbers and then started to decipher the message. R, E, X, M. The final letter was a T, and he stared down at the sentence, then at the chessboard. It seemed that somebody had a sense of humor. Rex marks the spot. Rex was Latin for king. White always goes first, so he reached out and touched the white king. As soon as his finger contacted the piece, it swiveled in place, turning around to face the back of the board. At the same time, there was a soft musical tone from overhead. He looked up and saw a tiny speaker set into the ceiling. Nothing else happened. No flashing lights or secret passageways opening up behind the wall. Apparently, he'd passed. How anticlimactic. It seemed like an awfully complicated test for something as supposedly mindless as a Trizquad zombie, though perhaps the researchers had been making plans for something else, something intelligent. It was an unsettling thought and not one he wanted to ponder. He stood up and turned toward the front of the room. Just as the door burst open, Rebecca and Steve hurrying in, wearing matching expressions on their fear. What is it? Rebecca held up a book, talking fast. We found a journal. It says that the strain of the virus used to infect the Trizquads is in Block D in room 101. Maybe everything's fine, but if John and Karen touch anything that's been contaminated, he'd heard enough. Let's go. They turned and strode past. They turned and he strode past them, leading them back the way they'd come. His thoughts racing. They had passed an exit on the far side of the building. He could send Steve and Rebecca to the next block over while he went to D, just as originally planned, only much faster, and now carrying the horrible, heavy fear that two of his people might accidentally uncover the T virus. It won't happen. They'll be careful. The chances of one of them getting a cut and then touching something dangerous in a room that's bound to be marked as some kind of a laboratory. The reassuring facts did nothing to ease his mind. They hurried toward the exit, a deepening knot of dread settling into the pit of David's stomach. They stood in the bright corridor at the center of D block, silently listening for a sound that would tell them David had come. From their position, they should be able to hear any one of the three external doors being used. After securing the building and finding the test room, she and John had chalked open all of the passages that led to the block's exits. Karen checked her watch and then rubbed her eyes, feeling a bit worn out from all of the night's events, and still sickened by what they'd found in room 101. Even John seemed unusually subdued and definitely quieter than normal. He hadn't cracked a single joke since they'd walked back to begin their wait. Maybe he's thinking about the gurneys fixed with bloody restraints on or the syringes, or the surgical experiment heaped in the sink. They'd found the test room first, a large chamber filled with little tables, each marked with numbers between 5 and 8. Karen had been somewhat disappointed to see that the blue series numbers 7 was just a handful of colored tiles with letters on them, half of them upside down and unreadable. All the colors corresponded to rainbows, though there were 2 extra violet tiles in the heaped pile, Since they couldn't risk messing with it until David completed the first test, she reluctantly turned away, suggesting that they check out the rest of the block. They'd gone through a couple of offices, empty, and a cluttered coffee room, where they found a box of incredibly moldy donuts and little else. It had been the chemical lab that had told them the most about what kind of place Umbrella had created. And although Karen didn't believe in ghosts, the room had given her a feeling like nothing she'd ever experienced before. It was haunted, plain and simple. Haunted by the misery of fear and the cold, Nazi-esque precision of scientists committing atrocities against their fellow man. "You thinking about that room?" John asked softly. Karen nodded but didn't say anything. John seemed to sense her unspoken desire not to talk about it, for which she was thankful. The weight of her good luck charm was the only other comfort she felt at the moment, and she longed to take it out, to feel reassured by memories of her father and successful missions gone by. Anything to take her mind off of the lab room. The outer door to 101 was clearly marked with a biohazard symbol, and they briefly discussed not going in at all, John arguing against entering a possibly contaminated environment. Karen had pointed out that neither of them had any cuts or abrasions, and that they might find something about the T virus to take with them. The truth was, she couldn't stand to let such an opportunity pass. She wanted to see what was behind the closed door, because it was there, because leaving it unopened would get under her skin. John had finally agreed, and they both gone in, stepping into a small entryway that was draped with sheets and heavy plastic. There were shower nozzles overhead and a drain set into the floor. A decon area. A smaller second door had opened up into the room itself, leading them into a mad scientist's dream. Glass crunching underfoot, a tired smell of anxious sweat beneath the acrid odor of bleach. John found the lights, and even before the large room snapped into view, Karen felt her heart start to pound. There was a dark tension that filled the air, a sense of foreboding that radiated from the very walls. It looked like a dozen other lab facilities she'd worked in. Counters and shelves, a couple of metal sinks, a large stainless steel refrigeration unit in one corner with a lock on the handle, and somehow that was the worst. That the environment was so familiar, a place she'd always felt at home. The few differences were dramatic ones. The room was dominated by a stainless autopsy table fitted with Velcro restraints, and there were 2 additional hospital gurneys next to it, likewise fitted. As she walked over to look at one of them, she saw the dark, dried stains at either end. The thin pad was soaked with blood from where a man's ankles and wrists would be. In the back of the room was a cage the size of a large walk-in closet, heavy bars surrounding an unpadded bench. Next to the cage, several slender poles leaned against the wall, each a meter or so in length, and tipped with hypodermic needles. They were the kind of instruments used to drug wild animals, allowing the person operating them to get within reach. Karen looked down at the gurney, lightly touching the long-dried stain, wondering what kind of person could have willingly participated in such an experiment. The crust of blood was old, powdery, and filled her with thoughts of what the victims must have endured, waiting in the cage, perhaps watching as some gloved madman injected a toxic, mutating virus into a helpless human being. It was a bad place, a place of evil deeds. They'd both felt it, both been affected by the realization of what had gone on there. Karen's right eye itched, distracting her from the terrible remembrance, drawing her back to the present. She'd rubbed at it, then looked at her watch again. It had been only 20 minutes since the team had split, although it felt longer. There was a sound of a door opening, followed by David's excited shout through the corridor he'd come in. Through the corridor. He'd come in through the west entrance. "Karen, John." John grinned at her, and she felt a wave of relief. David was okay. "Here, keep walking," John called back. "Take a right at the T." His footsteps pounded through the hall. In a few seconds, he appeared at the corner and jogged toward them, his face tight with concern. "Is everything?" Karen started to ask, but David cut her off. "Did you find the laboratory room, room 101? John frowned, his smile fading. "Yeah, it's back the way you came." Did either of you touch anything? Do you have any cuts, any small wounds that might have come in contact with anything?" Their confusion must have shown. David spoke quickly, looking back and forth between them. "We found a journal naming it as the room they were infecting the Trisquads." John smiled again. "Well, no shit. We figured that much out in about 2 seconds. Karen held out her hands, turning them over for David to see. Not a scratch. David exhaled sharply, his shoulders sagging. "Oh, thank God. I had the worst feeling all the way over that something had happened. We found the researchers in A Block. Eamon was right. He killed them. And our he has a name now. Rebecca seems certain that it's Nicholas Griffith. He was the one she recognized from Trent's list, and he has a rather sordid history. She can fill you in when we regroup." He shook his head, a wavering smile on his lips. I suppose I let my imagination run wild for a moment." John smiled wider. "Geez, David, I had no idea you cared, or that you thought we'd be stupid enough to stick ourselves with dirty needles in a place like this." David laughed, a soft, shaky sound. "Please accept my sincerest apologies." "Where are Steve and Rebecca?" Karen asked. "Probably in the next test area by now. I saw them safely off to Block B before I came here." "Did you find Test 7? This way," John said, and as they started down the hall, he began to recount their run-in with the Trisquads. Karen followed, rubbing at the maddening, elusive itch in her right eye. She must have irritated it with all of the rubbing. It seemed to be getting worse, and to top things off, she felt a headache coming on. She wiped at her eye, sighing inwardly at the timing. She never got headaches unless she was coming down with something. The swim in the ocean must have set her up nicely for a cold, and from the building throb in her head, it was going to be a nasty one. Well, Horror Horde, I can safely say I do believe that Miss Karen is infected. And you know when I think she got it? I think she got the infection when she was in room 101 and she got that itch in her eye after touching that dry blood, because if you notice, the author really went into detail with this blood, how it was powdery, it was dried for so long, it was powdery, and they didn't say what hand she touched it with, and they didn't say what hand she scratched her eye with, but I think when she went to go scratch her eye, she got herself infected. So, damn, Horror Horde, this book is getting good. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reading for you. And again, I do apologize that I'm not the strongest reader. Sometimes I get a little bit ahead of myself as I'm reading, and I kind of skip, or like I have to go back because I missay a word or whatever. But I just really hope you guys are enjoying it, because I'm having a lot of fun with this book. This is becoming one hell of a good book. So, all right, Horror Horde, with all that being said, I love you guys. Thank you guys. And don't forget, if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button along with that dingly ding ding button. That way, every time your boy Horror Gamer throws up one of these Horror Gamer reads, you're in the know. Also, when you're done doing that, head on over to the official Horror Gamer Patreon. Conveniently enough, the link for that is going to be in the description box below. Go over there, check it out, see what we got going on. You know, we do awesome stuff. We do movie nights every Saturday. We hang out, we talk, you know, we just enjoy each other's company. It's just an awesome time. And then after you're done doing that, head on over to the Z Network and see what kind of cool stuff we got going on out there. A bunch of us creators got together and created something for everybody. It's not just horror, not just, you know, comedy. It's a mixture of everything, you know. So it's a recipe that's been put together for everybody. So conveniently enough, also, the link for that's going to be in the description box below as well. So, all right, Horror Horde, with all that being said, I love you guys. Thank you guys. And until next time, this is your boy Horror Gamer saying, as always, don't fear the darkness. Embrace it.